Microsoft 365 all the time as a part of our daily workflows, from building spreadsheets in Excel, managing content in SharePoint, and collaborating with our coworkers on Teams. But did you know you can bring these business apps to life by using interactive maps? Incorporating ArcGIS intelligence inside of Microsoft has never been simpler.
To tell us more about how to connect Microsoft software with Esri's mapping capabilities, we are joined today by our colleague Mike Gregotski. Not only is he the guy that approves my timesheets, but he's also plugged into the world of ArcGIS for Microsoft 365. Mike, you finally made it. Welcome to your podcast debut.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mark. It took a little while, but here I am. This is fantastic. Thanks for having me today.
Oh, we're really excited to have you here. And it's really interesting that we're going to be talking about ArcGIS for Microsoft 365. It's not something that we think about all the time, but it actually has a lot of power. So why don't we start at the beginning and give us an explanation of what ArcGIS for Microsoft 365 does and how it integrates with the Microsoft ecosystem.
Yeah, that's a great way to start out here, Mark. So at its highest level, it's a suite of data visualization components that allows us to do location analytics directly in business apps. So more specifically, it's a grouping of ArcGIS apps that integrate directly into Excel, SharePoint, Teams, Power BI, and Power Automate. So not only are we mapping in these Microsoft products, but we get the ability to analyze and understand data and basically make spatial decisions and share this information in this environment. So the listeners to the podcast, they're probably more along the lines of like GIS professionals, or they're using GIS in their day-to-day work. And they may have tools available to them like ArcGIS Pro or ArcGIS Online. When they think of then, like, why should I start using ArcGIS for Microsoft 365? Then it seems like maybe, like, where's the fit there? Well, this can be another tool in their GIS toolbox that they use, or more holistically, they can look at it as a tool that helps enable the non-GIS professional. So perhaps the knowledge expert that works with them, or if there's people who are asking them for mapping information, you can enable them with ArcGIS for Microsoft 365, and then they can use these tools in an environment which they're likely very familiar with and work and be successful with a little bit of GIS tools to help them in their workflows.
Absolutely. I think it's really exciting for everyone to know that these tools exist because we all do use Microsoft 365 all the time. So it seems pretty obvious why this would be a useful product, but maybe you could just summarize some of the key benefits of this tool.
Yeah, for sure there, Maggie. So I guess leading from where I was sort of going with the first answer there too, like the real key benefit I see is like we're democratizing GIS capabilities for a large group of people. So that knowledge expert, they get their hands on some spatial tools. They can make better decisions using location as part of the decisions that they're making. So more specifically, let's look at Excel, and then let's look at ArcGIS for Excel. I was reading the other day that spreadsheets generally, all the spreadsheets that are out there, they contain about 80% of them, they contain data that has a spatial component to it. So if we're looking at something like a job, like a planner and a school board, they may have a spreadsheet that has some school addresses in it, lots of attribute information associated with the schools on classes, and so on. So they have that spreadsheet in Excel. With ArcGIS for Excel, they can very quickly plot those locations on a map. This is going to give them the spatial awareness of the schools, and also symbolize based on the attributes that they have, which is just terrific. It's a great first step. But then they can do a lot more. So within the tools that we have in ArcGIS for Excel and the whole ArcGIS system, we have a rich amount of demographic variables based on census information, like hundreds and thousands of variables available to us that allow us to geo-enrich the data that we have. So this basically allows the school planner and school board planner in this situation to perhaps analyze the population around the schools. What's the population like? Are there a lot of people moving into the area? Are there people moving out of the area? What's the age breakdown of the population? Are there a lot of school-age children, or are there going to be less school-age children now or in the future? Will this school therefore become oversubscribed or undersubscribed? So this leads them to be part of the decision-making that's happening, because we have spatial information here to help, underscore, like, perhaps we need more classes, more teachers, more schools, or less of these. So in the past, the GIS professional had to do that work. Now, the key benefit really of this product is that planner, that knowledge worker, has the capability to do this work large part by themselves.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, and I really like to hammer home that point that you made about how we're democratizing, mapping. Everyone uses Microsoft in some form. Not too many people use ArcGIS, so expanding the base is a really important component of this. So let's highlight some of the nuts and bolts of all this. So describe some of the main features of the product.
Yeah, I'll stick with Excel and ArcGIS for Excel. So we talked about mapping, and we can map fairly simply addresses, postal codes, XY coordinates, and that's terrific. Like, I don't want to underscore how important that is. But we can map even more. We can map what we call custom location types. So these would be line or polygon features. So your organization may have a set of boundaries, like the school board may have school districts, or the catchment areas for each school, or municipalities have a zoning layer. Commercial businesses may have sales districts. With these boundary layers, they could publish those up into ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise, and then with spreadsheets that have information related to those boundaries, those different the parcels or those different school districts and so on, we can then essentially do a join against those in Excel and map that, and then show the information directly in Excel that was on those spreadsheets, which is really powerful. And if you don't have your own boundary layers as well within the Living Atlas, we have a lot of different layers as well that are available, but well-known geography types. So census subdivision, census tracts, forest rotation areas, lots of great stuff that we can do there to display on a map. Another real main feature of Excel, which came out a few releases ago with ArcGIS for Excel, are the ability to use functions. So if you're an Excel user, you are probably pretty proficient at like stringing together formulas and so on, either through building it on the toolbars or right in the formula dialog itself. And with this, we can do the same thing with the ArcGIS functions we have. So we can get XY addresses, XY coordinates from addresses, or vice versa, do some routing, do some geo enrichment, all within the table without even opening the map. So this is pretty powerful, because the person who's proficient in Excel doesn't even have to get to the map yet before they start working and doing a lot more with ArcGIS for Excel and the data that they're working with.
Absolutely. I find this whole Excel option, ArcGIS for Excel, really fascinating and I think underutilized. So there's some really great features in there that people should take a look at. One of the things too that Microsoft 365 really helps bring to a workspace is teamwork, collaborating with other users, collaborating across your organization. So how does ArcGIS for Microsoft 365 facilitate teamwork and collaboration in the tools that it has available?
Yeah, thanks, Maggie. It facilitates teamwork and collaboration in a couple of ways. So let's take a map that you've made, and we'll start with ArcGIS for Excel. And we want to share and make this available to others in our organization. We want to discuss the map. We want to talk about the findings that we have. So the best way that we can do this is to use our ArcGIS identity, which would have a capability in your ArcGIS system to publish to ArcGIS Online or even ArcGIS Enterprise. Then once this live map is published, your internal audience, you can give them access to it, or if you see fit, you can make it available to the public. So here's where the possibilities really get endless. This map can now be consumed in any of the ArcGIS apps that are available. It could be a web map. Others in your organization could do further work with this data, or it can just be a point of discussion. Now, I've been talking heavy about ArcGIS for Excel, but when I mentioned other ArcGIS apps, some of these other ArcGIS apps can be the different components of ArcGIS for 365. So with ArcGIS for Teams, perhaps Mark and Maggie were in a chat and we're discussing a map that we've been working on or a topic we've been working on. With ArcGIS for Teams, we can directly bring that map into the chat, bring that map up. We could all export independently. We could even sketch and annotate it. And if we wanted to, we could kick over to a meeting and have that map up in a meeting and explore it all together there, which is a great way to do that without having to like get out of the Teams environment. It's all done right where that collaborative work is happening. And if we go, we look at one of the other products, take a look at SharePoint, for instance, and at its whole, SharePoint is really a collaboration tool. We put information on site pages for others in an organization to have access to. So with ArcGIS for SharePoint, we can take any of these maps we've created that are available in our organization, bring them up, put them on a site page to go along with all the other great resources that might be compiled that we want to share in our organization. So lots of ways to start collaborating and lots of ways to build on teamwork within ArcGIS for Microsoft 365.
Yeah, I could totally understand how organizations are fully utilizing ArcGIS within their Microsoft products, but it'd be kind of nice to be able to tie it in with the real world. So can you give an example of a notable organization who has implemented ArcGIS for Microsoft 365?
Sure, Mark. The Vancouver Police Department, they adopted ArcGIS for Excel, and they've been successful with this. And if we kind of want to look at sort of why they did, when we think about police work, like a lot of police work is done in the field, but there has to be some work done behind the scenes as well. So in the pain point they were having was officers, they needed to map warrant obtained data that related to cell phones or mobile devices and get those locations mapped as well. So they would take this to their crime analyst working at the Vancouver Police Department, and the crime analyst would map this. But that was fairly light work for the analyst when they should really be concentrating their time doing more in-depth crime analysis. So the police department, they adopted ArcGIS for Excel. The officers were then able to take the data in their own spreadsheets and ultimately map their own investigations, and then they were able to be productive right away with the data that they had. So this was successful because the officers, they were familiar with Excel. They could use it anywhere. They could use ArcGIS for Excel at a desk at headquarters, at a satellite office, something that they could start to use fairly quickly and easily. So the end result was the officers, they could get their own answers, and this improved investigation speed time from closure of cases. And so collaterally as well, the crime analysts, that allowed them to spend more time working and doing more detailed analysis on the crimes that they should be working on.
That's a great example to hear about because, like you said earlier, this is really a tool that can help bring GIS to people who aren't regular GIS users. So thanks for sharing that with us. And hopefully other organizations will take a look at using ArcGIS for Excel or the other tools available in the ArcGIS for Microsoft 365 suite of applications. Before we wrap things up today, we have to ask you our regular finishing off question because we've covered a lot of things across these tool sets. But if you could just leave our audience with 3 things that they should know or remember about ArcGIS for Microsoft 365, what would that be today?
Yeah, for 3 points, I'd say the first thing to remember is like we're bringing GIS to end users, to the knowledge workers who are actually doing the work and need that information. So that GIS professional, they empower that user, and then we allow them to do the work in ArcGIS for Microsoft 365. Secondly, and if we want to go back to a tool, which I think is always good to get right into the weeds here, check out the functions in ArcGIS for Excel. You can string those spatial functions together. That's very powerful with what you can do. Third, I would say just try ArcGIS for Microsoft 365. Get the add-in for ArcGIS for Excel, add it into, just add that right into Excel there. You can do it on the web, you can do it on the desktop. Open up a spreadsheet that has some spatial information. You've got, 80% of your spreadsheets probably have spatial information in it. So map that, show others what you can do. That's a great way to get started with it.
Absolutely. I know I want to get started right away. I keep hearing great things and I need to start using it. So I hope some of our listeners will give it a chance as well. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mike, on Spatial Report. That was Mike Gregotski. He is the manager of our technical marketing team here at Esri Canada, and he's joining us from the head office in Toronto.